protecting migrant criminals. They point these cases out. Since April, the agency is talking about illegal immigrants tied to several violent crimes, like a deadly New York City apartment fire, a kidnapping case of a 4-year-old, and a subway shoving incident that killed an 83-year-old veteran who was on his way home.
Powerful storms that included tornadoes tore through parts of Mississippi yesterday, damaging nearly 500 homes, tearing up trees, and downing power lines.
There was trees popping. I had a tree coming down in my front yard. I went in the house because it really got rough. I got on the floor, and when it come through pretty bad.
There were no immediate reports of fatalities, but at least 17 people were injured. The National Weather Service said a very large and dangerous tornado moved from eastern Lincoln County into Lawrence County. Disney cruise staffers are among those charged in a massive child porn operation. Chris DeMayo has more.
The ship's staffers are among 28 arrested in the bust initiated by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. CBP boarded 5 ships, including a Disney cruise docked in San Diego last month. A CBP spokesperson saying the suspects were involved in the receipt, distribution, or viewing of child pornography. A spokesperson for Disney says the company has zero tolerance for this type of behavior and that the individuals are no longer with the company. Chris DeMayo, Fox News.
In Texas, an illegal alien picks the wrong person to carjack. Surveillance video shows the moments before a Texas father shoots and kills a Mexican national who was trying to steal his car with his family inside. Brooke Taylor reports from Dallas.
This father in the car with his family and young children when he suddenly found himself having to protect his family and his car from this attempted carjacker. The suspect walks across the parking lot and tries to get into the driver's seat of the car. The father yanks him away while that young boy runs away, and then the two struggle for nearly a minute as the rest of the family, including a woman clutching a baby, rush out of the car. Now, even during the struggle, the suspect continues trying to take off in the car before the father finally opens fire, killing the would-be carjacker. Now, police have identified this suspect as 30-year-old Jose Ramirez.
Garland police say they do not plan to file charges against the father, saying he was acting in self-defense to protect himself and his family. An Ohio-based Tea Party activist feels confident about Vivek Ramaswamy's chances of becoming the Buckeye State's next governor. Chad Groening has more.
The high-profile entrepreneur has taken the next step toward the Ohio State House with a convincing win in the GOP primary, garnering 82.5% of the vote. That sets up a November showdown with Democrat Amy Acton, who ran unopposed. Tom Zawistowski is president of the Tea Party-affiliated We the People convention.
Well, I thought that Ramaswamy won by a larger margin than I expected. There was a turnout of about 22.5% statewide. And I thought because of that low turnout that his opponent, Casey Push, might get into the 30% range, but he only got to 17.5%. So that was a very strong, win by Vivek, and that bodes well for the November election.
Zawistowski is confident about the general election.
I expect to win. I would be shocked. I just don't see any way. For once, we have equal money, and with equal money, we just need to turn out in a regular fashion, and we're going to win. I expect to hold Ohio.
I'm Chad Groening.
And oil prices keep dropping on hopes that a deal may be nearing to allow tankers to carry crude oil once again in the Persian Gulf. The price for a barrel of Brent crude oil fell below $98, down from more than $115 earlier this week. More news available online at afn.net. And download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net. We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for joining me today. Man, total mayhem in the Tennessee House of Representatives just a few minutes ago as they passed a redistricting plan. I'm actually impressed, I got to say, look, as a Texan who probably wouldn't have a Texas if it weren't for all the Tennesseans that came and fought at the Alamo, I got to say, Tennessee, hats off. Man, this is what we've been looking for, are Republicans that want to win and save the country as bad as Democrats are willing to lie, cheat, and steal in order to destroy the country. Let me clarify that statement. I'm not saying we lie, cheat, and steal like they do. We have to fight as hard and want to win as bad as they want to destroy. We have to want to build, save, preserve, and defend as bad as they want to destroy. I mean, I'm sure I'll get some hate mail for this. It's King Alfred, man. It's the literally civilization against the barbarians. And if the Vikings and the barbarians, they want it bad enough, we have to be willing to fight and defend. And Republicans have not been willing to do that since I've been around. I mean, I remember 30 years ago how hard it was to get Republicans to be willing to fight hard. Again, not cheat, not lie, but just be willing to fight hard. Be willing to accept the boos and the people not liking you. Be willing to, be unpopular if necessary, to quote a new Skillet song in the last year. Yeah, I'm okay with being unpopular in order to get good things done. I'm willing to speak truth and let the chips fall where they may. And not too many Republicans are willing to do that. There aren't many that have enough backbone to make a freight train take a dirt road, and we need more like that. Well, Governor DeSantis showed us how to do it. He in 2 days. In 2 days. I mean, it's just remarkable what they did in Florida with a redistricting map that'll pick up 4 Republican seats and was done in, I mean, think about that, 48 hours. In 48 hours, they got it done. Now Tennessee has turned around and followed suit, and just a few minutes ago in the Tennessee House, the Democrats were yelling, screaming, crying. I mean, what we need are maybe 100 of those old Daily Wire liberal tears mugs. If you never had one of those, you should get one. It's like a Yeti. It's a nice coffee Yeti mug, but it just says liberal tears on the outside. I mean, I don't care. Let them whine, let them cry. If you're watching online, this is the smallest record player in the world playing My Heart Bleeds for You. These people were willing to lock us up and throw away the key. These people were willing to completely ignore the Constitution, due process. They were willing to jail grandmothers for praying at the Capitol. They were willing to completely throw out any concept of due process. The same judge, the exact same judge that has now said that he should, apologize to the would-be assassin of Donald Trump. He apologizes to the guy that runs in with a gun trying to kill the president of the United States. That same judge would not let me utter the word Constitution from the witness stand in a J6 trial several years ago. That's the same judge. That's the guy that would not let me talk about your First Amendment right of peaceful protest and the right of assembly and freedom of speech, wouldn't let me utter any of those words from the stand in a federal courtroom. And now he's apologizing to an actual assassin trying to kill the president of the United States. That's who these people are, all right? That's their value system. So when they ignore the rule of law in Virginia, when they violate their own Constitution in order to redistrict in a way that will give Democrats 4 more seats, they're, again, lying, cheating, stealing to do it. We should absolutely do everything we can within the rule of law, not lying, not cheating, not stealing, but actually pushing the envelope and doing everything we possibly can to defend the country. And Tennessee just did that. The Tennessee House of Representatives deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. They deserve to be recognized and honored as having the wherewithal and the backbone, shall we say, to do what's necessary to save the country. So Ron DeSantis in Florida and the legislature there, hats off. Hat tip to you for being willing to do what's necessary. And now Tennessee. And I mean, they're literally having to do it through the shouts and screams and crying of the left. And I watched the video right before we went live here, and I couldn't help but smile. I mean, it's just fun watching the guy, the Speaker of the House, and I think it's the Majority Leader, as they just ramrod it through like you have to do. It's what the left has done. Anyway, they literally following procedure, and they're having to yell over the microphones to even conduct the session. And I forget what Tennessee calls their officers. Here it would be in Texas, DPS, Department of Public Safety, runs security at the state capitol. I'm guessing it's Tennessee's Department of Public Safety. Anyway, they're literally having to remove people from the gallery that are disturbing the public peace and again, violating, not in any way peacefully doing anything. So yeah, mayhem in Tennessee for a good cause. So I'm trying to keep up. I don't know if I've got this right. But so far, let's just run down the list here. If I've got my list right, and please feel free to call in and correct me, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. But here's the states so far that have done this. Now, again, I've said this enough, but just in case you're a first-time listener, redistricting is perfectly legal. It's part of the political process. All it is drawing the district lines for who will represent or how the districts will be apportioned. In other words, let's do easy math. Let's say your state has 100,000 people and you have 10 representatives in your House of Representatives. And so you're going to have 10 districts with roughly 10,000 people each. Now you got to figure out where to draw the lines to divide up the 100,000 people in your state to have 10 districts of 10,000 people. Well, you can draw those lines any way you want to get more Republicans or more Democrats or whatever. That's perfectly legal and constitutional. It's not always fair. What you should do is have districts, I think, that represent those areas of the state. And that doesn't mean necessarily you're going to have exactly, let's say your state is 40% Democrat and 60% Republican. That doesn't mean you're going to have 6 Republicans and 4 Democrats. You might have 7 and 3. You might have 8 and 2. But you could do 10 and 0. You could draw the lines to where the Democrats are spread out into all the districts, depending on how your state breaks up and what the actual percentages are. Well, I think that's what Tennessee just did. I think theirs is going to be 10 and 0. So it's even more partisan than Virginia's. Now, if they did not violate their constitution like Virginia did, Virginia requires multiple sessions and a process, constitutional process to redistrict. Apparently, Tennessee doesn't. And if they do, and the Tennessee Republicans violated their own constitution to do so, then shame on them, and I will speak against them as much as I have the Democrats of Virginia. I don't think that's the case, and somebody please call me in if I've got that wrong. I think they're like Texas. They don't require a multiple session or regular session to do redistricting. Now, Texas, you could do it any time, and it's just the legislature has to pass it, and the governor has to sign it. I think Tennessee's is the same way. Okay, so where was I going with all that? Let's go down the list of those that have done it. So Texas did it last summer. Supposed to be a 5+ Republican seats. Now, that doesn't always hold. Like, you could draw a district that's 55% Republican. Doesn't mean a Republican's going to win. There are extenuating circumstances. You can end up with a really bad candidate. You can end up with somebody with a scandal, and then a Democrat sneaks in, and vice versa. Much more likely to have a scandal with a Democrat. But anyway, the bottom line is state. So So I think there'll be 5 seats picked up, 5 Republican seats picked up in Texas. Okay, then Missouri looks like they did it in September of last year, expected to have 1 Republican pickup. Then you've got North Carolina, expected to be 1 Republican seat picked up. Ohio did it in October as well, expected to be 2 Republican seats picked up. California in November, a voter-approved ballot measure. I thought they just now did theirs. I guess that was in November. Plus 5 Democrat seats. So if you're keeping count, that would be 3, 4, 9 minus the 5. So a 4 plus 4 net to Republicans at that point. Okay, then Utah expected to have a plus 1 for Democrats. How in the world is that happening in Utah? Let's go, people. What's happening there? But anyway, so that would get you down to a plus 3 for Republicans. Okay, then Virginia did their unconstitutional redistricting with plus 4 Democrats, so that would be a net of 1 for the Democrats. And now Florida with a plus 4 for Republicans. Does it feel like you're playing ping pong here, folks? So that would be, if plus 4 in Florida, would be a net nationwide of plus 3 Republicans. Okay, so now this Tennessee one, I don't know what the net on the Tennessee redistricting is. Let's see if I can find that, and that'll tell us kind of, and this is all, of course, if every seat drawn in that way actually netted that out. I don't know how many Democrats there were in Tennessee in Congress from Tennessee, but if this map held according to the way that's apparently drawn, it'd be 9-0. I think it's probably 2. I think it's probably another 2. I'll check on that during the break, which we're about to do. And so who knows who's left? Indiana, of course, wimped out. There's your wimpy Republicans, Indiana. And part of the reason I think you're going to see some dominoes fall here is because a couple of nights ago, most of those who fought Trump asking for Indiana to do just a fair redistricting map, and they refused, have been defeated. So they lost in their primary on Tuesday. Now, remember, what I mentioned on Tuesday is that all of this is, I don't want to say complicated. There's just another layer to this. It's actually going to be less complicated to do redistricting because of the Supreme Court decision saying you can't be a racist when you do redistricting. So you can't draw your map guaranteeing that a white person gets elected, or a black person, or a brown person, or a red person, or a yellow person, or, red, white, yellow, black, or brown. You cannot be factored in. And that's the way it always should have been, and we've been screaming for that, and so praise the Lord. Thank you, Lord, for this huge victory at the Supreme Court. So now that race cannot be a factor, every state should redraw their lines at this point and not use race. So just draw your lines based on population, and if you do it based on party, that's legal. That's, it's partisan, but it's absolutely legal. Indiana, I don't know if they can get another bite at the apple or not. I don't think so. I think theirs is going to have to wait, just from what I've been reading. I think Virginia's will get thrown out because they did violate the Virginia Constitution. That'll be up to the Virginia Supreme Court, not the U.S. Supreme Court. But if theirs gets thrown out, now you're probably looking net 7 or 8 Republicans nationwide. And considering that the majority in Congress is, 2 or 3 votes, then any one of these states could swing this thing. So I think at this point, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi are all still looking at it. New Jersey, South Carolina. So most of those are, of course, Republican states, New Jersey being the exception there. We'll talk about it more. We'd love to get your input. 888-589-8840 is the phone number. 888-589-8840. You are listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The American Enterprise Institute conducted an empirical study to understand the decline of religious faith in America. They concluded the data seem to show the main driver of secularization in the United States is government spending on education and control over the curricular content taught in schools. Why? Because children learn more at school than reading, writing, and arithmetic. They imbibe a whole set of implied assumptions about what's important in life. Faith in God becomes a sort of optional, weekend hobby akin to playing tennis or video games. And our tax dollars pay for it.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association. It's one of the most beautiful moments of the year to share life-changing news. Maybe you've seen it, a family gathered around the table when someone stands up and says, "Next year, there will be a brand new mom in our family." There's nothing like it. But for some women, Mother's Day feels very different. Instead of celebrating, they're carrying a secret, afraid, unsure, alone. That's why preborn exists. Because when a woman sees her baby on an ultrasound and hears that tiny heartbeat, it doubles the chance she'll choose life.
I couldn't imagine my life without him. Because of them, he's here. We're gonna get through it, and it's gonna be okay.
Preborn empowers women to become mothers. Just $28 provides one ultrasound. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or donate securely at preborn.com/AFR. That's preborn.com/AFR.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildmon, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, we are announcing 2 tours coming up in 2027, March of 2027. We're going to Greece and we're going to Italy. The Greece tour we call the Footsteps of Paul, and you're going to follow the footsteps of St. Paul in the country of Greece. And then the Italian tour, the Tour of Italy, Venice, Florence, Pisa, Rome, we're calling the Make Lasagna Great Again tour. And these are coming up in March of 2027. And if you want to read all about them, the itinerary, the cost, everything you need to know about these tours coming up in March of Greece and Italy, go to tours.afa.net. That's tours.afa.net. We're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of good fellowship, and see some of the most historic and iconic sites in the world.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. We are talking redistricting. I know I'm burning some of you out. You're like, okay, Rick, you've talked about this. You talked about it all day Tuesday practically, and here we go again. But man, this is so huge, and it's. I'll be honest, it's interesting to me because, I mean, I enjoy politics, and I definitely enjoy structure of politics. In other words, there's a line in the Declaration of Independence where Jefferson says that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new governments, laying its foundation on such principles. And then this line, and organizing its powers in such forms as shall seem to them the most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So the organizing of the powers is always intriguing to me because it is debatable how to do that. It's not as much of a principle debate, like abortion or marriage or even taxes and property rights and that kind of thing. It's more of a technicality in a way, but it is an equity question because how you organize those powers. Like that was the big debate at the Constitutional Convention was big state, small state, right? What's the big compromise that will save the day? And of course it turned out to be, okay, you get your Senate represented, the states get representation in the Senate with just 2 each and everybody gets the same representation. And then in the House, it's the people get representation directly based on population. And so, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say organizing its powers and the technicalities of how you're going to do the structure. Well, same debate with the 17th Amendment that those 2 senators from the states were supposed to be chosen by the legislature so that the state is actually getting representation in Washington, D.C. And then we, total morons, changed that in 1913 with the 17th Amendment. And now your U.S. senators are elected directly by the people, and so now you don't have, anybody in Washington that's actually looking out for the good of the state itself. They're all just looking out for how they're going to get reelected, and that because of that they are like another House of Representatives. Anyway, that's a different topic. But speaking of the House of Representatives, so how you structure that? How do you decide who's going to represent your state in the House? How do you decide, where to draw the lines for your redistricting? How do you even decide how those congressmen are going to be elected? Like, in other words, you could do a constitutional amendment and say even your House districts are going to be represented or chosen by the county judges of the counties that are represented in those districts. So all of these ideas and ways of doing elections and representation, I'm intrigued by. We are not, let's be very clear, part of the reason I'm intrigued by this is we are not a democracy. If we were a democracy, then it would be straight up, popular vote for every issue, not just every representative, but every issue. We would literally go online right now with the technology we have. You could put every vote that's happening in Congress, you could put it to a vote of the people, and everybody vote online on every issue. I think that'd be a chaotic disaster. It'd be mob rule on every issue. We would have whiplash from swinging back and forth on every issue. Insanity. It'd be crazy. A republic allows you to hire people to go represent you and spend the time researching each of those issues. Do the homework and the hard work to really think through what's this actually going to do, not just get in a frenzy and have a mob suddenly pass something. That's French Revolution kind of chaos right there. You don't want that. In a republic, and more importantly, a constitutional republic, you have those representatives that you've hired to go do the hard work, to research, to do those things, and you actually limit their decision-making even. So you say you can only deal with the issues that the Constitution gives you the authority to deal with. So that is honestly worked out to be the best organizing of those powers, those forms, the way that you're going to run your government that we've ever seen. Now, Madison was right when he said this is the worst form of government other than every other one. So let's always remember that, right? It is flawed, but it's still better than every other government out there. Certainly better than a pure democracy, certainly better than a parliamentary system like what England has and most of the Western free countries. But ours works. But the way that it works and the way that we kind of tweak how that representation is chosen is very intriguing to me. It's also it's the way we choose the president, the Electoral College, and that form of that organizing of that power is very intriguing. And we got a good national lesson in 2020 of how electors are chosen and when does the legislature get to change how electors are chosen and those types of questions. So all legitimate conversations and questions and legitimate process. I don't think we should out of hand say that a legislature is wrong for doing redistricting in a partisan way. I certainly don't think we should say that a legislature is wrong in doing redistricting in the middle of a decade, because some people out there are saying right now, oh, they should only do redistricting once every 10 years. That's what the Constitution calls for. No, the Constitution says within 10 years. It doesn't say you only do it once. And actually, I believe you could definitely make a strong argument that the founders would have supported doing redistricting more often if the population is changing more often, which now our society is more mobile. And so you have millions of people that have moved from one state to another or from one district to another since the last redistricting or even the census of 2020. So I mean, we have the technology, we have the ability. It makes sense to me that you would actually even do the census maybe every 5 years instead of every 10 years. You should absolutely order the census to be redone if there was clear violations of the Constitution in the previous census, which there was. We counted illegal aliens, not only in the census of actually counting people, but in the apportionment, the application of the census to which states get 5 seats versus 10 seats, 1 seat. So anyway, there's a lot of work that needs to be redone on the census. What you're seeing right now is not redoing the census. You're seeing a redoing of the apportion. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong terminology there. Apportionment is the census portion of which states get how many seats. Redistricting is within that state. How do you divvy up those seats? So we're not changing how many seats Virginia gets. They still get 11 seats. They're just trying to change where those seats are divvied up around the state. Tennessee is not changing the fact that they get 9 seats. That was determined by apportionment after the census. What Tennessee's saying is we're going to go from 8 Republican districts and 1 Democrat district to 9 Republican districts and 0 Democrat districts. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's definitely not fair because surely they have Democrats in Tennessee. Well, let's look at the rest of the country. Let's see. We got 12 states where it's all Republicans. Alaska's got 1 Republican. Arkansas's got 4 Republicans, no Democrats, meaning representing them in Congress. Idaho has 2 Republicans, no Democrats. Iowa, 4 Republicans, no Democrats. Montana, 2 Republicans, no Democrats. Nebraska, 3 Republicans, no Democrats. North Dakota, 1 Republican, no Democrat. By the way, Nebraska does have a Democrat. It's the dude that just sold us out on several issues, but he's got a Republican on his name, Bacon. I forget his name. Don Bacon, that's his name, yeah. Total sellout. Anyway, Oklahoma, 5 Republicans, no Democrats. South Dakota, 1 Republican, no Democrats. Utah, 4 Republicans, no Democrats. I guess what they're considering is creating a Democrat-leaning seat. West Virginia, 2 Republicans, no Democrats. Wyoming, 1 Republican, no Democrats. Now, obviously, these are small states, and so any small state, a lot of those were small states, any small state that's only got 1 or 2 representatives is most likely going to be all of one or the other. So here's the Democrat states. Connecticut, 5 Democrats, no Republicans. Delaware, 1 Democrat, no Republicans. Hawaii, 2 Democrats, no Republicans. Massachusetts, 9 Democrats, no Republicans. And that's like a 40% Republican state, right? I mean, Scott Brown won that state as a U.S. Senator. New Hampshire, 2 Democrats, no Republicans. New Mexico, 3 Democrats. Remember our caller Tuesday was talking about New Mexico having only 3 Democrats, no Republicans. Rhode Island, 2 Democrats, no Republicans. So clearly it's common. I mean, that's 19 states with all of one party represented in Congress. Now Tennessee potentially could be added to that list. So, and that may end up, I'm not sure I'm against that being the trend. If you think about federalism and you think about the design of the founders, that maybe that's the direction this whole thing needs to go. Now, I don't know what those numbers would turn out to be in Congress. I mean, what would happen if California had all 55 of their congressional districts, or 53, I guess, being Democrat? What would happen if Texas had all 38 become Republican? What if that happened in all the states? That'd be really interesting to look at. If you ended up with, all of the all the states being, truly red or blue in their representation in Congress, what would that look like? I don't know. But hey, I'm very intrigued to see how this whole thing plays out. And again, I'm gonna say it again. As long as you're following the law, you can be as partisan as you want. Now, you might pay a price for that. Like I think in Virginia, I think there'll probably be some heavy-duty prices paid politically. I think, very possible because Virginia is a state that tends to swing back and forth, that the Democrats pay a heavy political price for slamming this thing through and actually violating the Constitution in the way that they did it. Now, people have short memories, and they don't understand this issue. Part of the reason I'm spending so much time on it is that a lot of people that, it's too technical. It's too complicated. David Barton taught me a long time ago that if you want to win and you want to impact the culture, you can't just be passionate about the policy. You have to be passionate about the process. You have to care about this whole thing about organizing its powers in such forms. You have to care about how the process works, how committee structure works. I mean, that's why we created Patriot Academy. I'd only been with David for, I think I had been, I was just starting actually with David, starting to go out and do speaking for wall builders, and I was learning a lot for David. I mean, I was in my 20s. I was in my late 20s at the time. I was a young legislator in Texas, and so I'm learning the process in the Texas legislature. And when we started Patriot Academy, David was the one that really kind of convinced me and impressed upon me, you need to spend a lot of time on process, not just policy. And so we ended up kind of doing 3 major tracks to have a good leader in the movement. They needed to have the principles down, so the actual values of what policies you're going to be for, the right philosophy. But then they had to be really good at process. Why legislators across the country hire Patriot Academy graduates to come run their legislative offices, because they're so good at the process. And then third were the skills, the actual personal skills. How do you work a room? How do you get up in front of a room and speak well? And how do you win people over? How do you use rhetoric in a positive way? And that has paid off. We've created some really good leaders and trained them and sharpened them to be able to go be very effective in what they're doing. But I think our side is still woefully lacking in process. We glaze over, man. Our eyes glaze over too much on our side because it's easier to get passionate about the issue or the policy than it is the process. But I'm telling you, people that know the process well and work the process well win. Part of the reason we've had them run circles around us in legislatures and in campaigns and in just even the rhetoric out there is because we don't pay attention to the process and how to win it and then how to explain it. Maybe I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it. I'm trying to make it easier for us to understand what's happening right now in these states, so that what you don't want to do is you don't want to let the left claim that they're forcing Democrats out of the process. This is Jim Crow 2.0. Remember when they did that? All lies, absolutely. Think about the whole thing about the SAVE Act right now. They're claiming the rhetoric has been that Republicans are doing Jim Crow 2.0. They're not letting Democrats vote. They're not letting poor people vote. They're not letting whatever category vote. When in truth, we're saying everybody that's legal to vote, we want you to be able to vote. We just want to protect your vote. We want to make sure your vote actually counts and is not canceled out by someone that wasn't supposed to vote. But while we see that, the other side is able to really confuse that issue and make it look like you're literally preventing people from participating in the process, which is the opposite of what's happening. Same thing with redistricting. So you got the voting issue, who can actually go in and vote, and then with the redistricting issue, who are they voting for, where are the lines drawn for who they're actually going to have representing them in the state legislature and in Congress. So we've got to get better at it. I've got to get better at articulating it, because clearly I've used 2 segments to try to describe this. But at the end of the day, it's who's going to represent you in the state legislature and in Congress. And that's, of course, going to determine what the policies are that get passed out of that Congress. The reason President Trump is having such a hard time right now getting his agenda through Congress is because the votes are so close. And if all of this stuff was done fairly and by the book, if you took illegal aliens out of the census and then that results in more apportionment to blue areas, if you took that out, if you actually drew the lines in a fair way, you'd have about, as I said Tuesday, 40 more Republicans in Congress right now. Instead of this handful of a majority, you'd have dozens that you could lose on a vote. So your squishies, your wimps, your people that are selling out to lobby and everybody else, they matter less because you've got some cushion. You got 45 votes to potentially negotiate with in order to get some good stuff passed. So that's why all this matters so much. If you want Trump to keep winning, if you want America to be restored, if you want the Constitution to be followed, then you need to endure the conversation and be willing to listen and learn about redistricting and make the phone calls to the right people to encourage them to do the right thing. And frankly, you need to not be swayed by the campaign ads that are coming your way in the next few months in the midterms that are going to say so-and-so was doing this and so-and-so doing that. You need to know what actually happened with redistricting so you can support the right people for re-election in these midterms. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. We'll try to get to some other headlines in our final segment of the day. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
At At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we are working today to equip tomorrow's pastors and Christian leaders through biblical and theological education and practical ministry that's accredited, affordable, online, and highly personal. So whatever your next step is in being equipped for ministry, we're here for you. And if you believe these are the kinds of pastors we need leading our churches in the future, we invite you to learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary by visiting us at wbs.edu today.
Looking to take the next step in your education? Blue Mountain Christian University offers graduate degree programs designed for working adults who want to grow professionally and personally. With graduate studies in business, education, and kinesiology, BMCU combines academic excellence with a Christian worldview. With flexible and hybrid formats and supportive faculty, you can pursue a graduate degree while balancing work, family, and calling. Learn more at bmc.edu.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
How do you hide God's Word in your heart if you've never even held it in your hands? Outside of the U.S., millions of Christians go without what is so basic to the Christian faith, and that is having a Bible. But you can do something about it today.
The need for a change is through the Word of God. It is so important for the Bible, the Word of God, to be made available in whatever languages that are needed by people.
People now are very open to hear the gospel.
Whoever comes our way and is able to give us a Bible, it will be better than giving us food to eat.
Millions of believers around the world are crying out for God's Word, something that you and I can access every day. So if you love your Bible, if God has used His Word to grow you, would you give that to others? We want to bless 5,000 waiting believers this month at $5 a Bible. $100 sends 20, $500 sends 100.
You can give by calling 800-YES-WORD, 800-YES-WORD, or visit sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org.
The following is a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt, and it stressed me out. But what I thought was a solution turned out to be a problem. I kept hearing ads about debt settlement that seemed too good to be true. And actually, it was. When I called, they told me to stop paying my bills. That didn't sound right to me at all, so I hung up. Later, I found out that debt settlement is bad, real bad. Then I learned that there is a right way to pay off your credit cards. It's called a debt management program from the great team at Trinity. Trinity had a plan. In the end, I paid off my bills, I saved thousands, and I even improved my credit score.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Heather. Please forget debt settlement and remember Trinity Debt Management.
1-800-788-1813.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach, realizing fully that this subject needs more time. We need to spend more time on this because the more of us that understand how this thing works, the more likely we can get to a good result and not be fooled by the folks that are going to run all kinds of ads saying certain things are happening. So let me spend just a couple of more minutes explaining how this works, and then we'll go to the phones. We got people waiting. 888-589-8840. Bobby and I were talking off air during the break about this, and I guess one way to think about this, think about it if you have a school and you've got 1,000 students and you've got 10 classrooms, you got to decide which students are going to go to which classroom. And then you literally draw the lines of which students go where. It's the same way here. So let's say your state has, in fact, the example Bobby and I were talking about off air. Tennessee's got 9 congressional districts right now. Well, let's say 1 million new people move to Tennessee, and now they should get an extra seat in Congress. Now, somebody else is going to have to lose a seat because we only have 435 seats in Congress. That's what apportionment is. So after the census, you go, okay, we got this many people in the country, divide that by 435, and every congressional district is roughly, let's just for easy math, say 1 million people, even though it's a little less than that. It's like 900,000. But let's just say every congressional district is going to have 1 million people because you got 435 seats in Congress and 1 million people for each. That would assume we have 435 million people in America. We don't. We got like 390. If 1 million people move to Tennessee between the last census and this census, then when we now reapportion, meaning now we've got to decide which states get how many seats. Tennessee would get a new seat. So they've got 9 seats now. 1 million new people move in. Let's just say, for easy, again, 1 million people leave California and move to Tennessee. And about that many did. So 1 million people leave California and go to Tennessee. Well, now Tennessee will go from 9 members of Congress to 10 members of Congress. And California should go from 55 members of Congress to 54 members of Congress. And now Tennessee has to say, okay, well, now we've got 10 seats instead of 9, so now we have to redistrict, meaning redraw the lines for those 9 districts to now become 10 districts. And that means, Nashville, if most of those people moved into Nashville, then that area is probably going to get that new district. Or it's going to be a gerrymandered district that has little fingers drawn. You're literally drawing in a neighborhood. It's all got to be connected. You can't like take one part of Chattanooga and connect it to Memphis. So it does have to be contiguous. So but sometimes it'll be a long line, drawn from Nashville, which is actually what Virginia did. They took northern Virginia and had parts of northern Virginia connected all the way to the southern part of the state. That's legal. You can do that. That's the gerrymandering thing, named after Elbridge Gerry, signer of the Declaration of Independence, because when he was governor of Massachusetts, he signed off on a district that looked like a salamander in order to get a particular party represented, and so we call it gerrymandering. So it's always been this way since the country's been around. But let me back up and try to keep this in order of how this works. Okay, so you have your census. You figure out 1 million people move from California to Tennessee. So now Tennessee gets 10 districts instead of 9. So now Tennessee internally, that's apportionment. Apportionment is which states get how many districts. Now, within the state of Tennessee, they have to decide redistricting. They got to decide where those districts are where the lines are going to be. Now, I will say it would be easier if you had to keep counties together, right? Like that would make it easier, but it doesn't work because what if a county has 2 million people or 1.5 million? Let's say they got 1.5 million. Now they got to have one. You could do one full district within the county, but now the other 500,000 people got to be represented. So now they have to get put with another county that's next door. That's where it gets complicated. And I'm telling you, I've seen these guys when the legislatures are drawing these maps. You'll have 15 different maps. Everybody submits a map and says we should draw the lines this way and we should draw the lines that way. What they're basing it on is if people in your house have voted in the last 3 Republican primaries, your house is getting nailed as a Republican household. Maybe they only voted in 1 Republican primary, but still going to be leaning R. If they always voted in a Democrat primary, they're going to be a Democrat. So they're going to be looking at that and saying, hey, that neighborhood over there is 90% Democrat. Let's put them over here in this district. That's how this thing works, okay? It's complicated once they're getting in there and doing it, but it really comes down to once you divvy up where all those districts go, how many of those districts are going to be, say, 55% Republican or 60% Republican or 55 or 60% Democrat? That's what, when I say, hey, Tennessee has 8 Republicans right now and 1 Democrat represented in Congress. This new map is going to make it very likely that they have 9 Republicans and no Democrats. The reason is because what they did was they took that Democrat district and they drew the lines to where they took a bunch of those Democrats and they spread them into Republican districts, but not so much so that Republican district becomes a Democrat district. So they might have put 100,000 Democrats into a district that was already 800,000 Republicans and 200,000 Democrats, and maybe now it's going to be 700,000 Republicans and 300,000 Democrats. They're still going to elect a Republican out of there. But they diluted the Democrat vote. That's what the Democrats did in Virginia. That's what Democrats do in every Democrat state, and that's what Republicans do in every Republican state. At the end of the day, when all this redistricting is done, the real question at the end of the day is in November, in the midterms, on election night, how many Democrats get elected to Congress and how many Republicans get elected to Congress. And that's not guaranteed based on these districts. It just has a big, big impact. And so that's why all of this fighting is happening. Because at the end of the day, whoever has the majority in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., is going to control the purse. They're going to control all that money. They're going to control whether or not Donald Trump gets impeached 5 more times in the last 2 years of his presidency. They're going to whoever has the majority in the House of Representatives is going to determine what the country looks like for the next few years. If you've been upset about the stories of Somali daycares, if you've been upset about the stories where people are saying, wow, I was trying to figure out how these military-age men are just sitting around drinking coffee and all day and driving Maseratis. It's because they're taking your money and giving it to these people, and the fraud is off the charts. That's because of Democrat control in Washington, D.C. They set that up to basically fund their campaigns, because these very people that they're funneling your money to, your tax dollars, are then turning around and giving to their campaigns. Okay, if that bothers you, at the end of the day, that is ultimately decided by who controls the House of Representatives. Now, you might say, Rick, Republicans have had control for the last 15 months, and they still haven't shut that stuff down. They didn't pass all the Doge stuff that Elon Musk recommended, that he quickly figured out. I'm just as mad about that as you, but I'm telling you the reason they didn't pass that is because they only have a 2 or 3 vote majority. It's barely a Republican Congress, like so close that it's literally, what is it now, 220 to 215, something like that. It's very, very, very close, and so you can't make big changes with that very, very small majority, or it's incredibly hard. I actually think Speaker Johnson, and I've criticized him right here on this program when he did things that I didn't do things that I thought should be done, that we had the votes. The truth is he didn't have the votes. The fact that he's been able to get some of the things done that he's gotten done has been absolutely miraculous. With only a handful of vote majority, it's so easy to lose when you barely have the majority. Well, all of this redistricting, all of these fights, all over the country is about that number. It's all about who's going to get to 218, who's going to have a majority in Congress, and will the Republicans lose that majority by just a handful of votes, or is it even possible they could pick up 8, 10, 15, 20 seats and have a bigger majority and therefore be able to pass more of the MAGA agenda? That's what this is all about. And at the end of the day, it affects you and it affects me in so many different ways, not just the Somali daycares and the fraud and the corruption and all those kind of things. It also comes back to the policy issues that most of our side are really interested in, like abortion and marriage and taxes and property rights and all those things. Okay, I have talked way too long, and we got a ton of people on the phone, so we gotta take some phone calls. Let's go to Philip in Texas. Philip, you're up first, man. Go ahead. I'm sorry I made you wait so long. Okay, Philip, you there? All right. I don't hear. Oh, now I got you. Go ahead. I think Philip is cutting out on us, so let's go over to Jerry in Texas. Jerry, go ahead, man. You're up next.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to say I agree with the statement you made before the last break about not just being invested in the policy itself, but also understanding the procedure.
Yeah.
I would say to everybody that is listening to this program, and I know that you are associated with another group, but I read this book recently called Original Intent, and it totally changed my focus on actually understanding where the process and procedures have actually changed throughout our history. So if you're listening and you haven't read Original Intent by David Barton, it's a great book that hints on this. But within that book, it said that there are 4 things, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I have it marked and referenced, that we as citizens need to think about a bill before we go and say, let's vote on this. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the 4 things within the book, but it's a great read. Continue what you're doing. I impress upon my kids every day as we listen. I got one that listens to Wall Builders like religiously. And so just keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
so much. Yes, Original Intent is, and that's David Barton. That's the guy I was talking about earlier that impressed upon me how important procedure is, and being willing to take the time to study those things. And Original Intent is, that is what ultimately led to us getting the Kennedy case. David Barton actually showing the history of the phrase separation of church and state, where it came from. In fact, that the book was originally called The Myth of Separation when he first wrote it in 87 or 88, and then later added to it. And the back quarter of the book is the footnotes, the documentation. So he He absolutely brings the receipts in that book. Highly recommend it to everyone out there. So yeah, very, very, very good call. And definitely, folks, learn the procedure. Study these things. Richard in Arkansas, go for it.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I'm from Tennessee, which sparked my interest with all the redistricting involved. I'm currently driving through Arkansas, so if my cell phone cuts out, I apologize. Meanwhile, I thought I'd bring to the forefront the difference and contrast between the two parties and how they're structured. For instance, Jim Crow 1.0 goes back to the Democratic Party. We all pretty much know that because they were trying to prevent blacks from getting the votes by any means possible, hook or crook. And then President Lincoln is the one who emancipated them, and Democrats were so incensed by what he had done that they assassinated him at the theater. Meanwhile, I like to bring this forward into the present generations. Like, I grew up in the 60s as a child. My parents always told me that Democrats were crooks. And, as a child, I really didn't have any reason to contest that. And as I grew up into my early adult years, I thought, well, why are they crooks? Why just take that at face value? And so anyway, when Obama was first up for election,
Richard, I hate to cut you off, man, but I'm down to 120 seconds and the program's over. So let me comment on your first point, because, by the way, where are you in Arkansas?
We're in the middle of Texas, 88 Gardendale.
Your phone cut out. I couldn't understand you. I mean, Richard's 100% right on the history of the Democrats. I said this Tuesday. They've always been the racist party. They're the ones that did the Jim Crow laws. They're the ones that fought for slavery. Everything he said is right. And the birth of the Republican Party in 1856 was about civil rights. It was literally, I think it was 7 of the 9 planks of the Republican platform were to get rid of slavery and have equal rights for everybody. In 1860, same thing. It was like 10 of the 12. Planks, or 9 of the 11, whatever it was. My point is he's absolutely right, and it's always been that way. And unfortunately, they're still the party of racism. I mean, it's how their worldview works. It's what drives their politics and their system. They love to divide. And what we should be for is saying neither Jew nor Greek, neither rich nor poor, everybody treated the same under the law. And when you redistrict and you draw your lines, you don't factor in race. It should not be an issue, and that's what the Supreme Court just said. So that's going to affect. I think you are going to see a lot more states that do redistricting either this year or in the next 2 years, and finally get race out of it. Party will definitely be a factor. That's because you're drawing the lines for politics. So party's going to be a factor, and we just got to make sure that Republican states, red states, that they do this as aggressively as the Democrats do. And it is what it is. It's just being men of Issachar, understanding the times and knowing what to do, not being these wimpy, head in the sand, doing high school debate, arguing over Robert's Rules of Order, but actually getting in the trenches and doing the things that are legal and constitutional. Tough to do, but you got to do it. You got to fight like you want to win. As one guy said recently, fight, fight, fight. Let's go, folks. Let's get in the fight. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.